In this part, we will look at texturing the base, head, and body using paint layers and fill layers with smart masks. We'll also look at anchor points, which can transfer layer data from one layer to another. Open this sample model. We start by working on the base. First, create a fill layer. This will be the base color. We add a little bit of roughness, setting the value at 0.3. Then we add another fill layer, which will be for the scratches. Setting the metallic to full metallic initially, and a little bit of roughness. We then add a mask, which will add both scratches and edge wear. Experiment with the scratches layer color to find something that might work. The mask has some parameters that you can also play around with to add more or less edge wear and scratches. Here we create another fill layer, which will be used for creating dust and cavities on the model. Add the smart mask called dust occlusion to mask out only these areas on the model. You can control the dust level and contrast with parameters. Remove the default paint layer as we will not need it right now, and add a smart material. The smart material is built up of various predefined layers, masks, and other things. If you adjust the balance, you will control how much of the wear is visible. We use the same material on the head as well. We play around with the parameters on the different layers and masks to find a good combination that we can use for this part of the model. We will leave it like this for now. Another type of layer in Substance Painter is the paint layer. You create it by clicking this button. This paint layer will be used to paint hard surfaces or height information. We will use a brush to paint this information. Here I just test the brush. When you need to paint height information using normal maps, you can disable everything except the normal map channel, so that only the normal channel is affected on the layer. You can add a normal map by dragging it over from the Textures tab, or clicking on the normal button in the layer. You can see that the alpha is affecting how the brush looks. We're going to try a couple of different normal maps to try and find one that we can use for the head. We add an alpha to try and slightly change the shape of the painted area. What is missing here is that the edge wear is not present on the part we just painted. The edge wear is present on the smart mask, which is specific to a layer. To get the edge wear to transfer to that part as well, we create something called an anchor point. This will tell the software where we would like the effect to be transferred to. The anchor point has to be lower in the layer stack than the layer you're transferring it from for it to work. Go to Curvature and set Micro Details to True. Set Micro Height to the anchor point you have created. Then set the reference channel to Normal. Now the curvature will be transferred to the newly painted layer. Then we go back to change some of the parameters to make it look better overall. On the base, we should add some height to the scratches so that it looks more realistic. To do that, we go to the scratches layer and change the height parameter. This is how it looks with a positive value and with a negative value. We will use a very small negative value to achieve the effect of scratches under the paint. A little color tweak can also make a difference. In this part of the video, we will add an arrow to the character's chest to make it look a little bit more interesting. First, we try with a paint layer, and then I will show you why it would be better to use a fill layer as a more flexible solution a bit later in the video. Create a paint layer with a camouflage material. Change the bottom opening and circle around the arrow with a couple of parameters. We will only need the color and height information for this paint layer, so disable everything else. You can change the height and then repaint to make it the height in the parameters. We only need a little bit of height. The great thing about these materials is that you can change parameters to change how the material looks. Disadvantage, however, of the paint layer is that you have to repaint after each time you change parameters. We will now look at a more flexible solution to the same problem using fill layers instead of paint layers. Create the fill layer and a black mask. Select the alpha as before. Make sure you have the mask selected. This is where we will add this alpha. Change the size and angle of the paintbrush with shortcuts. Paint the mask. This is the shape of the mask that will reveal what is underneath, inside the white of the mask. Add a camouflage material to the fill layer. You can already start to see the advantage of the fill layer over the paint layer because you can change parameters such as height dynamically. The only not so flexible part is the mask, because we have to repaint that if we are to change the arrow, circle around the arrow, or the placement of the arrow. But a lot of the other parameters that cause the need for a repaint with just the paint layer can now be adjusted without the need to repaint, such as changing the colors of the pattern, the height, and the pattern itself. In the next part, we will add some lights to the model's head. And we will also look at the radial symmetry feature.